In our send feedback script, we have one very simple piece of input validation, and that is we validate each of these fields for some data. So we make sure that none of the fields are empty. However, there is another very simple thing that we can test for, and that's to test that the user has put in a valid email address. Now, we have no way of telling that the user has put in their email address, and we certainly can't see whether the user's email address actually exists as a real valid address that mail will go to. But we can test to make sure that the email address is the right format, which will prevent people from just putting in a few random letters and numbers and thinking that they can add their data to the system without giving the data that we've asked them for. So let's include a very simple condition straight after this condition, and what we're going to use to test for the email's validity in format is we're going to use a regular expression, which is going to test to make sure that it fits the right pattern that an email should look like. Now, we know basically what that is intuitively through having seen a lot of emails addresses, and that will be, there'll be some text of some kind, and then an @ sign, and then a domain, which will be some text with maybe a .com or a .net, or for a more local one, maybe it'll be .com.au or .de. Now, we can specify that in a very specific way using only one line of code using a regular expression. This is a very good example of the flexibility and power of regular expressions in a real situation. We're going to use this function, and you notice that we've included the I at the end of the function. This makes the test case insensitive, so that it won't care whether we're talking about capital letters or small letters. Now, the syntax for our email testing is going to be something like this. We're going to use that symbol, which in the case of regular expression syntax is going to stand for at the beginning of the string that we're going to test against. So at the beginning of the string that we're going to test against, it wants to find the following character pattern. And the first character has to be a letter or a number or an underscore character. And then we include those within square brackets so that PHP knows that we're looking for something within one of the two ranges we've specified or the underscore character. Then we're going to use a plus symbol, and this means one or more of this kind of character. Then we need the @ every email address has an @ sign, and that's just treated as a literal @ sign. And then we need to do something similar here, except that we need to include a hyphen character, and we're going to use a backslash before it in order to escape that particular character. And then we're going to use a plus sign to say that we need one or more of this kind of character, and then we need a dot. We're going to have to use a backslash again to escape that, because the dot has another particular significance within regular expressions that at the moment we don't mean. We just mean a literal dot. Then a number of letters or numbers or hyphens or dots, because there could be more than one dot included within the domain, for instance in the case of a local domain name such as ihug.com.au. And then we need another plus sign to indicate there can be one or more of those kind of characters. Then we need a $ at the end to say that nothing else will come after that last particular pattern. To say that we expect the string in its entirety to fit that kind of a pattern. And then we need to give the name of the string that we're going to check against this regular expression. And as you can see, we've put the logical not operator right at the beginning. So what this condition is essentially evaluating is if email, the variable email, is not a valid email address according to this pattern. Then we're going to have to include an error message similar to the one above. So we're going to have the same heading, and we're going to need a different error message, however, so that the user knows what they've done wrong. And then we're simply going to use we're going to reopen our PHP tag rather, and we're going to have an exit statement, and then we're going to close that curly bracket to close this block of commands. Now we're going to save our script. Now you'll notice that there's some repetition here. We've repeated this kind of code with this kind of thing here. Because there's two separate pieces there, we can't just use a single variable and drop that variable in whenever there's an error. Now you may be thinking that this can't be an efficient way to do things, and there must be a way to code this kind of situation without repeating text. And you'd be absolutely right. Repeating things in our scripts is not always, but in the vast majority of cases, if we find ourselves repeating any code, then we're doing something wrong. And we're going to learn in our next chapter about functions and a way to automate this kind of error capture process. But right now, we're going to leave it like this because this works with the techniques that you've learned so far. Let's go back to our browser, and we're going to test. First of all, we're going to test leaving the email blank. Please fill in all fields is the error condition that we get. So let's go back. And now we're going to try putting in just some random text, not an email address at all. Now, as we can see, our PHP script has asked us for a valid email address. So it's correctly identifying invalid email addresses. And we need to put in an extra line break here for the sake of neatness. So we've installed a very simple little error capture system, which is not going to capture all errors, but is going to go a small way towards making our system a little more robust. In our next movie, we're going to look at file uploads.